I put my laundry in the wash.
Good morning, everybody. We are starting our third day of this national convention in Plano, Texas. We're starting off with Desmond Silveira, the American Solidarity Party Director of Operations, but I like to refer to him as our ballot access guru because he knows more about it than probably anybody else in our party. And he's going to talk to us today about 2024 ballot access strategy and his 270 plan. So Desmond.
Hi. So I thought I'd start out with a bit of our ballot access history, just to give some context. Back in 2016, with the Mike Matern campaign, we had no money, almost no money. The campaign didn't do fundraising. We were all totally new to all of this. So the one state that we got ballot access in was Colorado. That was an easy achievement, $1,000. We had a lot of write-in access in other states, but we only were on the ballot in that one state. And that set us up for the future with Brian Carroll's campaign. With the Carroll campaign, we did do fundraising. We also were still newbies, didn't know what we were doing. So probably made some we certainly made mistakes along the way. But one of the things that came out of the Carroll campaign was that we had built a large team of people to handle ballot access in the various jurisdictions. There were probably close to 50 people. We started doing a weekly scrum, meeting every Saturday morning, discuss what needed to be done, what had been done, any blockers to progress, and we were much more organized than we had been in 2016. Going into 2020, so back in, shortly after the conclusion of the 2020 election, I had thought, well, one of the things we learned from 2020 is that we didn't get started nearly as early as we should have been. And I thought we need to correct that for our next presidential campaign, meaning we can't wait till the last minute to come up with a plan. I had done some analysis of what might be achievable within reason. There are people that are always going to want more than what we can reasonably achieve, and we have to be stretch. We have to stretch, but we also have to be reasonable. So I'm for those that may not know, I'm a hardcore into data. I love spreadsheets. So I have a spreadsheet with lots of data about membership, about votes, extrapolated votes based, projected votes based on data extrapolation, signature requirements, costs, fees, all that kind of stuff. Most of that is for independent access. So I should back up and say that there, in order to get on the ballot, there are a few different ways. The best way to get on the ballot, and usually the most expensive way to get on the ballot, is to be recognized as a party. That tends to be very expensive and not easily achievable for most states. The next step down would be independent access. So what that means is we get on the ballot, our candidate is listed there, a person doesn't have to write a name in, but the party name is not found. They're running officially as an independent. And then the next level down would be the write-in status, which before I joined the party, I thought you can write in any name you want and they'll count it. That's not how it works. There is a process. You've usually got to get enough signatures or some other requirements. It's usually a modest amount, say 100 signatures, but it still takes some effort. It's not free, and they don't count everyone. And the rules vary greatly depending on the state. Some states are extremely difficult even to get write-in access. Some don't allow write-in access at all, and signature requirements for other states, it varies. It can be quite difficult. Some are less difficult. So part of my data analysis was to determine cost-benefit ratios. So I came up with what I call the 270 plan because I track a lot of candidates. Back in 2020, I was tracking 32 candidates in the general election, mostly third party or unknown people, of course. There were actually around, there were over 1,000 candidates that filed with the FEC to run for president. Most of them didn't get a single vote. So I tracked the top 32. One of the things I noticed was that it's a lot easier to market your campaign once you hit certain thresholds. It's not a gradual increase. And that 270 mark is where you get a big jump in attention, because theoretically 270 is the number of electoral votes required to win. If you don't have that, then it's impossible to win. When you get 270 votes, you get more prominent placement on Wikipedia. Wikipedia has one election, 2024 election page for its duopoly candidates and anyone else that has 270 votes of electoral access, which really just means the Libertarians and the Greens. They're really just a small section at the bottom of the page, but still being on that page gets you a lot more attention than the alternative. The alternative is a page that's just for minor parties, but even which has many more candidates. But even on that page, the number of electoral votes determines your placement on the page. So the Libertarians and the Greens are at the top and get a big section on that page. Then came Constitution Party and the Socialists and some others. And we weren't at the bottom, but we were closer to the middle bottom. As we raise our electoral vote eligibility, we go up. And that rise can lead to a lot more attention with people are requesting interviews when we're listed among many candidates. People put out blog posts and lists of candidates, and they usually order by electoral vote eligibility. So just being higher in the list gets us a lot more attention. It's good to be high on the list. So let me show you what I have here. So Jack, there was another tab with my spreadsheet. That might be, if you can bring that up, if it's easy. Yeah. Oh, is that it? Good. Awesome. Great. So I'm not going to go over the data in detail. I'm just going to go over the concepts. This is all ordered by ease of access. Now I've got, so as you can tell, Florida's at the top. It's probably the easiest state at this point to get ballot access. We're aiming for ballot access, not just write-in access. right access, we do want for states where we don't get ballot access, but we're focusing on what counts. Back in shortly after 2020, there was some work done to most of my work has been to catalog what is required for independent ballot access, because that's usually far more achievable than party access. After the 2020 campaign, the party did get an intern to look into what it takes to get on as a party, and I believe that work has been done, but it seems to have been lost. So we're still looking for it. There are multiple people that have been trying to find that. So in order to get party recognition, that work is still ongoing, let's call it that. But to get independent ballot access, we've got a lot of data. I went to each state, the actual statutes, not just going to Ballotpedia, but to look up what is actually in the law to get precise verbiage, catalog that, and get vote counts when it's usually, say, a percentage of the last gubernatorial election or whatever else. So that's all cataloged in my spreadsheet. You guys can see that, right? And we also have good data on write-in access. These two are we're pretty good on. Now there have been some changes in the law over the past few years. There may need to be some updates. For example, Colorado used to be one of the easiest states to get on. Now it's recently been changed, so it's substantially harder. When statutes change, we need to get that, and I can't be certain that I caught everything in that regard. The general concept about the strategy that I proposed for ballot access is if we're going to try to reach that 270 mark, to order the states based on cost efficiency. What are the easiest, what gives us the most electoral vote eligibility per dollar? I also wrote, keep in mind, I wrote this back in 2020 or a few months after the election. That was pandemic times. So the costs involved, the petitioning costs were largely unknown. Prior to that, I went speaking to professional petitioners and people in other parties. They had said they had been paying $2 a signature. In the midst of the pandemic, they had gone way higher. I had hoped that number would come back down to $2, but it hasn't. It's still pretty expensive. The last numbers that I've seen have been close to around $6 per signature. So the absolute cost that I had documented in that 2020 plan, they hadn't been accurate. I just recently updated it for $6, and that $6 per signature, and that did shift around a few states slightly. But the important thing is less about the absolute cost and more about the ratios. The ratios are still the same. The concepts are what's important. So I'm not expecting you guys to see much about this, but I really just wanted to explain the concept with this spreadsheet that the states have been ordered based on the cost per electoral vote. Now, I should get back to that $6 cost. So I had hoped that we could hit the 270 mark. That was based on a $2 per signature estimate. I thought that 270 is very achievable. At $6, it's a lot less achievable. So although I'm not saying we should completely ignore that 270, it's still a stretch. It's just more of a stretch, much more of a stretch. And if there's a good chance, a very good chance that we won't make it, then our strategy will likely need to be adjusted. Instead of trying to get the lowest cost per electoral vote, we really ought to get the lowest cost per popular vote, which is can be significantly different from the cost per electoral vote, depending on the states, because some states we can get a lot of, much more of a popular vote. The electoral vote, it's different. So with that said, let me switch back to, I'll tab it, yeah, to the proposal that I had. And this is, nothing has been official. This is just my proposal. Hoping to get some buy-in. That's what I'm going for. So I still call it the 270 plan because that should be even if it's a stretch goal, it should still be a goal. The best states to work on or with the highest priority, I should say, they've got different deadlines, so I don't want to say right away, but with the highest priority should be Florida, Mississippi, Louisiana. Their costs are very minimal. It's more about paperwork, and it can be a lot of paperwork. Getting a chapter running, getting some bylaws written. There are getting a committee running and recognized. Those take time. They are tasks that need to be done, but we are on our way, or have been working on that. They're among the easiest. And I may have some. There's a lot in each state, so if I say something wrong, feel free to jump out and correct me, Bill or Skylar or anyone else who has information, because this has been a team effort. It's not necessarily me dictating everything. I've had collaboration with a lot of people that have provided input. The next easy states should be Tennessee, New Jersey, Washington. The signature requirements quite low, should be easy, relatively easy to meet some of those requirements. So I should go on a slight tangent and talk about our efforts to gather signatures. We, being new, weren't sure whether we could get enough volunteers to, say, get 1,000 signatures, or whether we need to do paid petitioning. We've tried both and had marginal success. That may be a bit harsh. We've had some success in signature gathering via volunteers, but it's a lot harder than a lot of us imagine. Back in 2018, when I was running for governor of California, I did a lot of on-the-street petitioning with my clipboard, with a few friends, party members. I thought maybe I could get a few hundred per day. That didn't work out. On a good day, I could get 30 signatures. And that would be a pretty good day, standing in front of a supermarket that was with a lot of foot traffic. it's easier. It's not as easy as it may seem. So with some of these low count states, Tennessee, New Jersey, Washington, I'm hoping that our volunteer base can put a big dent in getting that done. I'm not convinced, I personally am not convinced that we can do it all via volunteer basis. It really also depends on how early we can organize. If we wait till the last minute, then it's probably not going to get done with volunteers. We need to organize early. Below that, we've got Illinois. That is a special case. We got lucky. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but we got lucky in 2020 because the pandemic led the Illinois legislature to reduce petitioning requirements temporarily. And whereas prior to the pandemic, I believe it was 25,000 signatures required. During the pandemic, they cut it to, I think, 2,500. Is that correct? Yeah.
And we ended up with about 300, I think. No, it's and actually, six. Six. We had 600. 600? So
Yeah.
They didn't check. If they
Yeah.
checked, we wouldn't have made it.
Yeah, so we did get lucky there. Hawaii is an interesting case. We had ignored it for a long time because the amount of signatures required to get on the ballot as an independent was extraordinarily high. And we don't expect to get a huge number of votes out of Hawaii. But during my research, I found out we probably should not have been ignoring Hawaii, because although that independent ballot access is really tough, it's really not easy to get party status. That's the one state where it's actually easier to get party status than independent access. I believe it's a percentage of votes, so it's not.
It's about, I think this year, it's about 680 signatures.
Yeah.
And then you add in the buffer for the non-validated ones, I think we want 800 or so, something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, so it's within the hundreds to get party access. Figure out. It seems like something that we could probably get volunteers to help out with if we can fly a volunteer over there. Otherwise, paid petitioners will charge a lot because they got to fly over there, get a hotel there. Hawaii doesn't have. It's not worth a lot of electoral votes, so there isn't a lot of professional petitioning that lives in Hawaii. It's usually people that need to fly over. That makes it a little bit more expensive. Something we need to deal with. Next would be, let's talk about Wisconsin and Minnesota. Those require a very modest number of, is it 2,000? I think it's 2,000 signatures per state for each of those. That's on the lower end for sure. And both Wisconsin and Minnesota, which should be fertile ground for our party, they have more aligned with us. We can extrapolate a higher number of popular votes out of those. So I really hope we can, I have a high degree of confidence that we could and should get Wisconsin and Minnesota.
And last time we got Wisconsin, but not Minnesota, I think largely because we had a stronger state chapter.
Yeah, so a lot of it also depends on our ground game, whether we have people on the ground that can help out. So chapter development, very, very important. Arkansas, we are on the ballot in Arkansas. I don't know who to thank for that. Is it Patrick?
Yeah, I think we got that done like over a year ago.
Yeah, we did get that done early on. The story there was that Arkansas was one of those states that was making it much, much harder to get on the ballot. We saw that bill coming up. Before it got signed, we we did everything we could to meet the old criteria, met it, and before the law went into effect, we became ballot qualified. And we are not recognized as a party. We are recognized as a party in our.
No, it's independent access.
Okay, independent access. So the downside there is that after this 2024, we are not on the ballot in Arkansas. We lose Arkansas probably for a long time, but we've got Arkansas this time around for sure, and hopefully we can build enough membership there that we are more prepared for the future, have a higher chance of meeting requirements in the future. The next state that I should talk about is Pennsylvania. So Pennsylvania is has high requirements, very high requirements. I believe it's 5,000. 5,000 is not easy to get. It's quite expensive, but Pennsylvania gives us a lot of votes, a lot of popular votes, a lot of electoral votes. I have it higher in my prioritization because we get a lot out of it. It'll be really expensive, but I think it's really worth it. And we have had a lot of members out of Pennsylvania over our party's history, so that should show that Pennsylvania is fertile grounds for us. Utah. Utah requires 1,000 signatures. Back in 2016, we had hoped that there were enough people that were upset with Trump that my understanding is that Mormons don't like Trump because they have historically been on the outside, and Trump hasn't been very kind to people on the outside, so they can relate. I had hoped that a lot of Mormons would find our party appealing. Evan McMullen kind of ruined our plans there. He was a presidential candidate out of Utah, and he got a lot of our attention. But I still think that moving forward, Utah can be fertile grounds for us, and what did I say? Is it just 1,000 signatures? Yes, it's a good bet. Ohio. Ohio is just like Pennsylvania. It's very expensive. It was, I don't remember exactly. I think it's 5,000 signatures, but Ohio has Franciscan University of Steubenville. It's got a very strong chapter. Our Ohio guys have always been strong within the party. It'll be very, very costly, but a lot of reward for that cost. I think that Ohio really should be one of those states we prioritize. After Ohio, then it gets a lot more dicey. It's these states really stretching for. We don't get a whole lot. We're not going to get a whole lot of votes out of them, and they're costly. But we still, if we've got the resources, we want to pursue them because the more ballot access, the better. Of course, the more votes we're going to get in total. But the efficiency goes significantly down after Ohio. So there's Iowa with 1,500 votes. That signature cost isn't very high, but we don't. I would think that out of the Midwest we would get a lot of votes, but we haven't been. Iowa particularly. Virginia requires 5,000, just like Pennsylvania and Ohio, but we've gotten less love out of Virginia than either Ohio or Pennsylvania. Idaho, only worth 4 electoral votes. Cost is modest, 1,000 signatures, but we haven't gotten a lot of votes coming out in Ohio. We have very little ground game there. We have very people that can help us out. It's tougher. Delaware, that's one of the states where it's a percentage of voters from the last election. The cost is modest. For my notes, it was 775 signatures. That may be adjusted. I'm not sure if that's updated, but again, it's only worth 3 electoral votes. We have no ground game there. It'll be a tougher.
Then where are Rhode Island and Vermont on your list? So because our ticket is New England and there are only 1,000 signatures.
So Rhode Island is coming up.
Okay.
I'm about there. So Georgia is next. That, like Pennsylvania and Ohio, there's a lot of potential for it, but the cost is high at 7,500 votes. That's significantly higher than Pennsylvania and Ohio. Next would be New York, and New York is probably the most expensive out of all of these that I have, but what we get out of it is huge, huge, huge. So it's a lower priority, but if we have the money, maybe worth pursuing it. Rhode Island is next. So as Skylar said, maybe it might be worth it to raise Rhode Island's priority. The cost isn't that high, but the reason I haven't had it higher on my priority list is because we've had low. Rhode Island is supposed to be a little bit more Catholic than other states, but we haven't gotten a lot of votes out of there. In 2020, I believe it was something like 530 votes that we got out of Rhode Island, which isn't bad, but for the cost, it's a bit less efficient. Then come some of the even less efficient states, Alabama, Kentucky, Nebraska. I'm not necessarily going to go through the specific details, but it takes a lot to get qualified over there, and we don't get a lot of votes out of those states. If we've got the resource, let's do it, but we shouldn't prioritize these over other states. Vermont is next, and again, it's not incredibly expensive, but we really haven't gotten much help there. So contingency states. So the states that I had gone over are all the states that we need to absolutely get in order to hit that 270 goal. If we get all those, we've hit 270, we're golden. I wouldn't necessarily count on getting all those. There are lots of things that go wrong in 2020. There are plenty of things that went wrong. So in my 270 plan, I've advocated for some what I call contingency states. If we've got the resources, let's pursue these states. They're not very efficient at all, but if something goes wrong in among the other states, then we've at least got the electoral votes for these. These include Massachusetts and Missouri. Notably, I'll point out that this was all planned before we had candidates. So Connecticut isn't on the list. It's one of the less efficient states, but maybe we want to reevaluate that. And Mr. Stonsky has a following. He's an elected official, so we can possibly get more popular votes there than we could have otherwise. But I think we should probably make that decision based on some data analysis, do some projection on what we can expect and what it'll cost us. What states are we giving up before we we just want to make an informed decision. That's all I'm having.
The other thing for Pennsylvania and Ohio, it does get us more media attention and lots of potential votes, but it does open up, the Democrats and Republicans will be really, really mad at us. Fine, we just have to be ready.
Yeah, I'm ready for a fight. This is a proposal. I was hoping for some buy-in. I've gotten a lot of buy-in. Lots of people have looked at this and say they love it. There are some other lists that have been floating around that are very similar. I believe Patrick came up with a list. I compared his to mine. It's very, very, very similar. And I believe
Dane has a list.
Yeah, Dane has a list. And Everett, you said that you had something as well?
I'm working on it.
Okay, you're working on it. So I definitely think that there's, it would be good to collaborate, compare, make sure that, we understand our reasonings for why we're proposing what we're proposing, and maybe come up with some collaborative list. Yes.
Have you updated it at all since you originally gave this presentation in 2021?
Yes.
Like, for instance, Alaska changed their ballot access requirements. Have you gone and tried to do a refresher or not?
So I have refreshed it I've done some. I've updated it from $2 per signature to $6 per signature. That reordered some states around. And as I've found out about new criteria to get ballot access, I've updated that, but that hasn't been some systemic update where I'm going through each state and re-looking at the different statutes. It's just about, I'm a subscriber to Ballot Access News. I keep in contact with this expert in the field named Richard Winger. He is truly an expert on ballot access. He gets calls to testify before, I believe he's been before the Supreme Court to talk about ballot access cases. So through him, I may hear about what is changing, but like I said, I haven't systemically gone through and looked at the statutes myself. So it's possible I may have missed something. Yes.
So, Massachusetts and Missouri give us 21 votes, right? That doesn't seem like a lot of buffer. Like, is it an efficiency drop off after that, or should we maybe be
there's a significant efficiency drop off. I actually had more contingency states, but that was back when it was $2, when I estimated $2 a vote, because it was more realistic to put resources in contingency states. Now, when it's maybe less likely that we might hit that 270 mark, we want to be a little bit more efficient with what resources we put towards the lower priority states. That's my proposal.
Have you considered like people's the size of members, social networks, like in this?
So in my spreadsheet, I do have that captured. The membership numbers per state, but how might you be advocating that be factored into the efficiency?
Well, if we need a certain amount of signatures and someone can get them by asking their friends, family, then that might.
Yeah, so, yes. Volunteer efforts have been kind of wishy-washy in the past, so I'm hoping that we can do as much with volunteer efforts as possible, but I certainly wouldn't necessarily want to rely on them. That's how I put it.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. So let me see if I have this straight. That when you're talking about the different states, you are recommending hiring professionals to get the signatures. I know in New Jersey with volunteers, we have a very low number needed. I had a lot of volunteers from adjacent states or nearby states to come in, but in New Jersey, you are required to be an eligible voter to collect signatures, and you need to swear and sign an affidavit to get that. So I don't know if that's a factor in Hawaii or some of the other states where you actually need people on the ground doing that, or are you advocating just for those states to hire professionals to do it?
So each state is different, and I can offer Hawaii as an example. We got, I don't know if I want to reveal some of the numbers, but we got a quote from a professional, and it seemed higher. It wasn't unreasonable. It was higher than what we expected. We did some number crunching. Thank you, Bill. And found that, well, if we send a guy over there and put him in a hotel that we pay for and give him a per diem, and he basically collects signatures for free for us, then it'll be substantially lower in price. It'll still be many thousands of dollars, but go ahead, Bill.
With respect to the comment of substantially lower in price, I would say it would be comparable to professionals on the mainland, as opposed to the exorbitant price that we would quote for Hawaii, which was 50 to 100% more than.
But you would need volunteers that knew how to get signatures, because as you know, Desmond, and some of us know, it's far more difficult than you realize, and people make certain mistakes like knocking on doors, which is it doesn't pay off.
Yeah, yes.
So
the person that we've been in talks, and we wouldn't send anyone over there that hasn't had some experience with it. It would be an experienced party volunteer. Yes.
So I know this list at this point is primarily prioritized by popular vote costs.
Yes.
So if we looked at that breakdown, if you could just scroll up to one example.
Sure.
What we would see is, for example, I think Idaho was $1,500 per electoral vote, but it was lower on the list in states with a higher electoral vote cost because the popular vote cost was higher.
Yes.
So, if we're talking about the economic efficiency angle, I understand the value of the electoral vote for ordering and news coverage and Wikipedia and those things. I'm not sure I see the value in chasing the efficiency of total votes. I'm wondering, how in your opinion, should we factor things like consistency? So should Wisconsin be higher on the list because we've been on there before, and do we want to not fall off compared to some of these states that we haven't been in before? And then also, how much should we prioritize the states of New England? I know New Hampshire was a contingency state prior and fell off in this iteration. But since our two nominees are from New England and can easily travel around that area, where in terms of we have the reality that people have jobs and they have families, it's difficult to travel. So it would be easier to stump in Rhode Island or New Hampshire for our nominees than it would be to stump in Pennsylvania or Ohio.
Yes.
So can you talk about those issues?
Yeah. So that's a great point. My prioritization is really based on very few factors: the cost, the number of electoral votes that we'd be eligible for, and the projected vote count. There are other factors that absolutely should be considered. They're more soft factors without a particular metric. And so I didn't include them in my ordering, but they should be considered. This is really just a baseline. There are other factors include where our candidates are, where they're able to go, what we've done historically. My current prioritization does not account for history, where we've had ballot access and may not necessarily want to go a consecutive year election cycle, foregoing ballot access that we've had in the past. We also want to consider other things like alternatives. So if a state is eligible, a state might not allow write-in access. If it doesn't allow write-in access, then ballot access becomes even more valuable, because if we don't have that ballot access, we've got nothing. Maybe the write-in access is
tally of all write-ins as opposed to individual.
Well, they don't
Exactly.
vote their write-ins.
Yes, there are some states that they'll accept write-ins, but they don't actually tell you how many votes you got. That's kind of worthless. I mean, in those states, all getting access is really only valuable for the electoral vote eligibility and your placement on the page in Wikipedia and other publications. The number of votes that you get in the actual election are completely meaningless.
And the priority here does not necessarily equal the intensity that campaign wishes for.
Correct.
For example, in California, where there's no chance to go to ballot, but very easy to get write-in access, and it's a big state, there's a lot of voters there.
Yes.
So we put a lot of campaign.
Yeah, we usually get thousands of popular votes in California, even though we just have write-in
But
access.
for the Wikipedia listing, it's a problem because they don't tell us until the week before whether we really made it. California.
Yeah. So again, according to states, some states we can submit all the paperwork and the signatures that have been required for whatever level of access, and they sit on it, and we don't hear about our eligibility for right up until before the election, which is really unfortunate because we can't do marketing. We can't say, hey, everyone come vote for us. We could, but if they show up at the poll and then find out that their write-in isn't going to be counted, that seems we've deceived them. It seems deceptive. And I should also point out that electoral votes and popular votes have value to us at different times. The electoral vote eligibility is really important to us on the run-up to the election. It gets us that popularity. After the election, it's not meaningful at all. Everyone forgets about how many electoral votes you were eligible for. Everyone is grading you based on how many votes you actually got. So prioritizing by electoral votes versus popular votes has a different value. Everett, you were next.
I have a question about the American Independent Party. So this is somewhat directed to you as a
Yes.
Californian, which I think single-handedly would double our vote count probably last time. Do you have a sense? I've totally lost track of what it is and what it wants. And what, do you have any sense of that at this point?
Yes. So there's this may be a little bit of a controversial topic, but if no one objects, I'm going to talk about it anyways. The American Independent Party does have a platform. It's far right, and it has a ton of people that have signed up for it. But they've done in California. They only exist in California. They the people that have signed up to be American Independent have been duped because they think that they're signing up to be an independent voter. They don't realize they're signing up for a political party. That's why the party chose the name American Independent. There has been some, talk about, what we might be able to learn from that and take advantage in that regard. But, there's, we don't want to be deceptive in the same way that they have.
But they did not nominate a right-wing candidate last time, so that is, interesting.
Yeah, so there could be, it's not black and white. If we did some more kind of deceptive things, we could be in a better position. But yeah, I know multiple people in the party that have said, yeah, we should definitely do some of that stuff. Others said, no, we want to stay far away from that. We don't want to be viewed in any negative light. Yes.
What was your estimated vote count if we actually pulled out the 274?
That's a good question. Let's see. So, if based on the top of my head, I believe it was a little over 100,000 votes. If we pulled off the 270. 93,000 votes. So I should also point out that voter turnout changes significantly by election year. And it's not, in my opinion, I don't necessarily think it's the number of votes that makes the biggest difference, but our ranking among other candidates. So when we're with Mike Maturin, I believe we came in, was it 15th place? And then with Brian Carroll, we came in, I think it was 10th place or 11th?
We were 10th.
10th.
But the difference, one thing to look at is that some of, like Kanye, is not going to party. He was a personality. Others that finished ahead of us are not going to be back.
Correct.
And there's always going to be personalities that come in and they're flash in the pan. They don't build anything.
Agreed.
We're more concerned with building something.
Yeah, so when I say we got in 10th place, that doesn't mean we're the 10th party. That means we were the 10th highest candidate. Some of the candidates above us were vanity candidates. They just wanted their name on the ballot. They don't have any kind of organization or infrastructure behind them. After that election, they're going to be gone, disappeared. And some new vanity candidates are going to come along in the next cycle. If we hit the 270 with, say, 100,000 votes, I would expect us to come in fifth or sixth place. My goal would be to surpass the Constitution Party. The Constitution Party is doing really poorly. They did really poorly in the past election, but they had some momentum. At this point, I think we can surpass them and hopefully be the fifth largest party in the nation. That's a goal. Yes.
Yeah, so I know you used a constant in calculating the popular vote. Do you have any thoughts about how we might more accurately estimate what the different popular votes would be in the different states? And could we statistically take into account things like the candidate's ability to stump in those states and those kinds of questions so that we can get a more accurate cost per popular vote estimate?
I'm open to proposals about how to factor in, candidates' ability to stump. I couldn't think of an easy metric about how much is Mr. Sonsky going to contribute to the popular vote. It's nothing you can measure. So,
but I mean, should we not be able to say, like, if we know that Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, like the availability there, I mean, we're talking about like Warren, and where she lives, is about an hour from Rhode Island.
Yeah.
So for an event, you could go down and back in a day, there would be really no cost.
Yeah.
To, like, as opposed to having to go somewhere to stay in a hotel and traveling. I would think that those opportunities would lead to a disproportionate increase relative to cost.
Oh, absolutely.
And I'm just wondering, I don't know, maybe we need a statistician who can kind of list
Yeah, if there's some way to come up with a number and that gets factored in, then that's great. I'm all for that. I just personally don't know how do I get that into a spreadsheet. Any other questions? Yes.
What are like the top venues that you guys have been using to collect signatures at? You know, you mentioned supermarkets, tough duty.
I can talk about my own signature gathering efforts for my gubernatorial campaign. I never having even tried this before, not even for gathering signatures for someone I support. I was completely new. I started out at a mall. That was not a good idea. We got 0 signatures there, and people didn't want to talk to us. They just walked away, and we kind of got run off by security. So, the person that I was with, Ross Heckman, he is a lawyer, and he said, you know what, let's go to a supermarket. I think we went to Ralph's over in California. And he had, at the time, told me that there was a court case that established supermarkets as being part of the public square, even though it's private property, and that we could go there without anyone trying to run us off. And that didn't necessarily apply to malls. So we did go there, and the management came out and they saw us, and they didn't try to run us off, and we collected comfortably. It was still tough, but we got more than 0 signatures. I think after 8 hours of signature gathering, I might have gotten 30 signatures.
DMV is where it's at.
Yeah, that's what I was told recently. Don't do supermarkets, do the DMV, because you've got a more captive audience. I haven't tried it myself, but that's what I was told. And also, Ross did later, or more recently, say he thought he was wrong about that court case, and that private property isn't the public square, so they could have run us off. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know that for sure, but just let you guys know. Yes, Brian.
The other thing about the DMV is people oftentimes have their legal address with them. At a supermarket, the percentage of invalid signatures goes up. People just don't know where they live or where they're registered.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Supermarkets tend not to let people off just because they're going to everybody that I've talked to who has done this like professionally or has volunteer experience tends to like that venue. So I'm just throwing that out there.
Okay. Did you have one?
I just wanted to say, and I'm in a state that requires a small amount of signatures, but when I ran, my best collectors were people I knew who had kids on softball teams and just kid events. So you gave it to the parents and they went and had all their friends sign it, because you have much more effect. In fact, your sign, instead of Peter Sonsky, help my friend Peter. And then people walk up, and then they have much more open minds.
I've heard positive things about that too. Kids sports games.
Yeah, kids sports games, a very good one.
Well, let's give a round of applause for Desmond. We are going to have a strategy session after lunch, so it's going to be in a roundtable format, so we can